In this video, we are going to talk about the concept of hoisting in JavaScript. Why is it considered a tricky concept and why do interviewers keep asking it on interviews? Also, I'm going to let you know something right away. Hoisting is almost never used in modern JavaScript. You'll see why shortly. So why are we even talking about it here? Well, you took an in-depth JavaScript course, and in here, I want to make sure to cover everything that is used in JavaScript. So if someone mentions hoisting or maybe asks you that question in an interview, you will be able to provide an answer. With that said, let's explain what it is. So hoisting is a JavaScript mechanism where variables and function declarations are moved to the top of their scope before code execution. In the last video, we learned what scope is. This means that no matter where functions and variables are declared, they are moved to the top of their scope regardless of whether their scope is global or local. Basically, when JavaScript compiles all of your code, all variable declarations and function declarations using all way of writing functions are hoisted or lifted to the top of their scope, whether is it local or global. Now, this may sound confusing. That's exactly why we're going to show it right here in an example. In JavaScript, an undeclared variable is assigned the value undefined at execution and is also type of undefined. So if we try to console log a type of the variable, let's say age right here, what are we supposed to get? Well, we get undefined. So we are trying to console log the variable or the type of the variable, which we never declared. So we get undefined. But what would happen if we just tried console logging the age alone? Remember, age has never been declared. As you can see, we get uncaught reference error, age is not defined. Of course, we cannot have variables which we never defined. So what does this has to do with hoisting? Well, you would say we need to declare a variable age right here. For example, var age is equal to something like 20. And that would of course work. But let me show you a trick. If I declare var age even here, we are also going to get rid of the error. So let's save it. And as you can see, now it gets to undefined. Why is that so? That's because of the hoisting. And that's something you should never actually enforce using. As you can see, if we declare it normally, just right here using var, we get 20. But even if we declare it below, which shouldn't actually work, it kind of does, because we don't get error anymore, we only get undefined. So that's called hoisting, bringing the variables to the top of the scope. Key thing to note in regards to hoisting is that only thing that gets moved to the top is the variable declaration. So only this thing gets to the top, not the actual value given to the variable. What do I mean by that? Well, hoisting actually does something that looks like this. It declares a variable, then moves that to the top, and then declares the actual value to the variable. So this would be what hoisting actually looks like behind the scenes. As you can see, we get undefined right there. Of course, you should always declare variables before actually calling them. With that, we don't have any problems. We get the variable right there. So why is hoisting even useful? Well, it's not. It's just good to know that it exists so that if something ever occurs, you know that maybe hoisting affected that. You should always be declaring variables at the top and you should never be concerned with hoisting. So let's take one more example. So if we declare a variable hoist right here, and then if we tried console logging it, hoist, and just below, if we tried giving it a value, hoist, the variable has been hoisted. Okay, so if we try doing this, you can see we get undefined. And if we put the variable below the console log, we also get undefined. Only if we move both of them at the top, we get the actual value. Okay, let's do the second example. In here, we're going to have a function, so hoist. And notice how we have a normal function declaration here, even though I said that we'll be from now on always using arrow function. This is an exception, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. In here, let's try console logging a variable, for example, console log message. As you can see, the message variable hasn't been declared yet, but let's try declaring it here, var message, and let's say test. Of course, now we can try calling the function, hoist. Okay, we get undefined because as we said, only the declaration is going to get up to the top. So that's gonna look something like this, var message. then we console log the message, and then we actually set the value to the variable. That's hoisting for you guys. There's no real use case in that. You always can declare variables just like this. Declare it, provide it a value, and then below, make sure to use it, not the other way around. Always declare the top and then use. So if you do this, you can see we get test. Here's a tricky one. What would happen if we brought the function call at the top? So before the function declaration, what do you think? Are we going to get the error? Are we going to get undefined? Or are we going to get the console log of this message? If we do that, we're going to get test. That means that even though we declared our function later, still that function was hoisted to the top. So the same thing that happens with variables also happens with function declarations. They get hoisted to the top. This section of the course is the only time you'll see me use the older syntax like function declarations and var keywords. Why is that? It shows you that newer versions of JavaScript are trying to get away from this way of writing code. It's good to know that hoisting exists, but you should never actually use it. Always declare variables where they should be, at the top of the scope they're used in. That way, your code is always going to be predictable and you don't have to rely on hoisting. With let and const, you get back exactly what you would expect, a reference error. What's the situation with hoisting for const and let variables? Let's try it out. So if I declare a variable called age and put it equal to 25, if I then try to console log the age, of course this works, right? We declare the variable at the top and then we use it right here. But now let's do that crazy thing where we bring the console log up and the variable down. Is this gonna work? As you can see, with modern JavaScript using constants, we get reference error, cannot access age before initialization. That means that the actual declaration of a variable using const is not hoisted to the top. So if we try doing let, the same thing should happen. You can also see cannot access before initialization. And I'm actually really glad that this happened because this enforces good programming habits. Always declare your variables at the top of the file. Just to get back at this example for a second, we said that normal function declarations like these ones are actually hoisted. So we can do something like this, call the function before we actually declare it. So now let's write the same actually, modern arrow function. Const hoist is equal to an arrow function where we're going to have just the message inside. Now, if we try to call hoist before, let's save it. As you can see, cannot access hoist before initialization. Another way to show you that with modern JavaScript, hoisting doesn't really exist. Just to sum up this lesson, I want to say that hoisting as well as closures, which we're going to mention in the next video, are complex topics. I would say that they are not even all that useful in everyday coding. If you stick to the good programming habits, you would never even encounter hoisting or closures. I've still decided to include them in the tricky concepts part because questions regarding closures and hoistings are often asked in the interview questions, so there you have it. Okay, in the next video, we'll talk about closures.